The champagne flute trembled in Zoey Abbott's hand as Marcus Reinhardt, her boss's most obnoxious client, backed her against the gilded wall of the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom. His cologne, expensive but overpowering, made her eyes water as he leaned closer, oblivious to her discomfort. "A research assistant like you should know how to network properly," Marcus said, his eyes drifting to her neckline instead of her face. "Why don't we discuss your career aspirations somewhere more private?" Zoey tightened her grip on her champagne, calculating whether the satisfaction of throwing it in his face would be worth losing her job at the prestigious art authentication firm where she'd worked for just 8 months. The annual Art Preservation Gala was the biggest networking event of the year, and she was blowing it spectacularly. "I appreciate your interest in my career," she said carefully, "but I'm actually quite comfortable discussing it right here." Marcus's smile tightened. "Don't be difficult, Zoey. A little gratitude goes a long way in this industry." Just as Zoey prepared to risk her professional future with a scathing response, a deep voice cut through their conversation. "There you are, I've been looking everywhere for you." A tall, broad-shouldered man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit appeared beside them, his presence commanding immediate attention. With dark hair styled precisely and eyes the color of burnished amber, he exuded confidence without effort. He extended his hand to Zoey, not to Marcus. "I believe we had arranged to discuss the Caravaggio authentication. I'm afraid I'm running late." Zoey stared at him, momentarily confused. They had no such arrangement, but his eyes held a clear message: play along. "Yes, of course," she said, taking his offered hand. "I was just wrapping up here." Marcus straightened, suddenly uncertain. "I don't believe we've met." "Marcus Reinhardt, Reinhardt Galleries." "Sebastian Xavier," the stranger replied, his handshake brief but firm. "Pleasure. Now if you'll excuse us, Miss Abbott and I have important matters to discuss." Before Marcus could respond, Sebastian guided Zoey away with a light touch at her elbow, navigating through the crowd with practiced ease. "Thank you," Zoey whispered when they were safely across the ballroom. That was becoming uncomfortable. Sebastian's smile transformed his serious face. "I've met enough Reinhardts to recognize a rescue mission when I see one. Are you all right?" "I am now." Zoey studied him, trying to place his face. "Though I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage. You know my name, but we haven't actually met before, have we?" "We haven't," he admitted. "But your reputation precedes you. Your paper on scientific methods of Renaissance art authentication was exceptional." Zoey blinked in surprise. Her paper had been published in a niche academic journal, not exactly popular reading material. "You read that?" "I make it my business to follow innovations in art authentication," Sebastian said, "especially when they come from unexpected places." Something about his phrasing made Zoey straighten her shoulders. "Unexpected because I'm young, or because I work for Hargrove instead of a bigger firm?" Sebastian's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. "Neither. Unexpected because most authentication specialists get trapped in traditional methodologies. Your approach was refreshing." His sincerity disarmed her. "Well, thank you for both the rescue and the compliment, Mr. Xavier." "Sebastian, please." He glanced around the glittering ballroom. "Not enjoying the gala, is it that obvious?" Zoey grimaced. "These events are important for networking, but you'd rather be in a lab analyzing pigment samples than making small talk with people who think art is just an investment vehicle." "Exactly," Zoey laughed, surprised by his understanding. "My boss insists I attend these functions, but I never know what to say to people." "You could start by telling me about the Modigliani controversy you mentioned in your footnotes. I found that particularly intriguing." For the next hour, Zoey forgot about the gala entirely. Sebastian asked informed questions about her research, offered thoughtful insights, and made her laugh with stories about eccentric collectors. Unlike most people at these events, he actually listened when she spoke. "You know," Zoey said eventually, "for someone who claims to be interested in my work, you haven't mentioned what you do." Sebastian's expression shifted slightly. "I'm in acquisitions and preservation." "For a museum?" Zoey asked. "Private sector," he replied. Speaking of which, I should probably make my rounds before the evening ends. It was truly a pleasure meeting you, Zoey. He reached into his pocket and handed her a simple business card with just his name and a phone number. If you ever want to continue our discussion about non-destructive testing methods, or if you need rescuing from another Reinhardt, please call. Before Zoey could respond, Sebastian was gone, navigating through the crowd with the same effortless confidence he'd displayed all evening. She turned the card over in her fingers, surprised by her disappointment at his abrupt departure. Her boss, Eleanor Hargrove, appeared at her side. "Was that Sebastian Xavier you were speaking with?" "Yes," Zoey said, tucking the card into her clutch. "Do you know him?" Eleanor's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. Everyone in the art world knows Sebastian Xavier. His collection is legendary and his foundation funds half the conservation projects in the country. His foundation, Zoey repeated, the Xavier Art Preservation Trust. He established it after inheriting his family's shipping empire. Eleanor gave her a meaningful look. "He's worth billions, Zoey, and he never attends these events. Never. What did you talk about that kept him engaged for over an hour?" Zoey's mind raced as she processed this information. "We discussed authentication techniques." Eleanor's laugh was incredulous. "Of course you did. Only you would talk shop with one of the wealthiest collectors in America." She shook her head. "Come on, let me introduce you to the MA Acquisitions Director before he leaves." Throughout the rest of the evening, Zoey's thoughts kept returning to Sebastian. Not because of his wealth, which seemed almost absurd now that she knew, but because of the genuine interest he'd shown in her work, the way he'd listened, the way his eyes had lit up when she'd explained her theories. And perhaps, if she were being honest with herself, because of the warmth that had spread through her when he smiled. 2 days later, Zoey was hunched over her desk at Hargrove Authentication, squinting at minute brush strokes in a digital scan, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I find myself thinking about our conversation at the gala. Would you be interested in continuing it over dinner?" Sebastian Xavier. Zoey stared at the message, her heart racing. Sebastian Xavier, billionaire, art collector, rescuer from uncomfortable situations, wanted to have dinner with her, to talk about art authentication. It seemed surreal. She typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on. "I'd enjoy that. When were you thinking?" His reply came almost immediately. "Tonight, if you're free, 8 p.m. at Lumiere." Zoey nearly dropped her phone. Lumiere was the most exclusive restaurant in the city with a 6-month waiting list. Of course, that probably wasn't an issue for someone like Sebastian Xavier. "Tonight works. See you at 8, she replied, trying to sound casual while her mind screamed questions about what to wear and whether this was professional networking or something else entirely. Lumiere lived up to its reputation. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over intimate tables, and the understated elegance of the decor spoke of refined taste rather than ostentation. When Zoey gave her name, the maitre d' immediately escorted her to a private corner where Sebastian was already waiting. He stood as she approached, and Zoey was struck again by his presence. In dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater, he looked more relaxed than at the gala, but no less commanding. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and Zoey was grateful she'd rushed home to change into her only designer dress, a deep emerald silk that her sister had insisted she buy for emergencies. "Thank you," she said, settling into her chair. "This place is incredible." The chef trained in Lyon before developing his own style. "I thought you might appreciate his artistic approach to food." As the evening progressed, Zoey found herself increasingly drawn to Sebastian. He was thoughtful and articulate, with a dry wit that matched her own. They discussed everything from Renaissance techniques to modern conservation challenges, and Zoey was impressed by his knowledge. "How did you become so interested in art authentication?" she asked as their desserts arrived. "Most collectors I've met care more about provenance than technical analysis." Sebastian considered the question. "My father collected art as a status symbol. He knew the names to buy but never understood what made them valuable beyond market trends." His expression softened. My mother was different. She taught art history before she married him and would sneak me into museums to show me why a painting mattered beyond its price tag. She sounds wonderful, Zoe said. She was. His smile held a touch of sadness. After she died, I found myself drawn to understanding art the way she did, not just appreciating its beauty, but understanding its creation, its journey through time. Is that when you started your foundation? Sebastian looked slightly surprised. You did your research. My boss nearly fainted when she realized who you were, Zoe admitted. I may have Googled you afterward, he laughed, the sound rich and genuine. And what did your research tell you? That you're something of a recluse in social circles? That you built your family's shipping business into a global logistics empire? That your art foundation focuses on preservation techniques and education? She met his eyes directly. What it didn't tell me is why someone like you would be interested in having dinner with someone like me. Sebastian held her gaze. Someone like you, a research assistant with student loans and a rented apartment in Brooklyn. Someone brilliant who sees art the way I wish more people would, he countered. I didn't ask you to dinner because of who you are or aren't on paper, Zoe. I asked because our conversation at the gala was the most engaging one I've had in months. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and Zoe felt something shift between them, a recognition that this wasn't just about professional interests. Besides, Sebastian added with a small smile, if we're going to discuss status disparities, I should mention that you intimidate me. Zoe nearly choked on her wine. I intimidate you? That's absurd. Is it? Your paper challenges methodologies that have been accepted for decades. That takes not only intelligence but courage. His eyes held hers. Intelligence has always been more impressive to me than a bank account. By the time Sebastian walked her to her door that evening, Zoe knew she was in trouble. This wasn't just attraction, though that was certainly present, it was something deeper, a connection she hadn't anticipated. Thank you for tonight, she said, fumbling slightly with her keys. I had a wonderful time, as did I. Sebastian hesitated, then asked, would it be too forward to ask if I could see you again? Zoe looked up at him, at the uncertainty in his expression that seemed so at odds with his confident demeanor. Not too forward at all. His smile lit up his entire face. Good, I'll call you tomorrow. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. The brief contact sent warmth cascading through her. Good night, Zoe. Good night, Sebastian. As she closed her door behind her, Zoe leaned against it, touching her fingers to her cheek. What had started as a rescue at a gala was quickly becoming something she hadn't been looking for, but now couldn't imagine walking away from. Over the next several weeks, Zoe and Sebastian fell into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comfortable. He took her to gallery openings and hidden gem restaurants, while she introduced him to her favorite hole-in-the-wall cafes and the joy of New York street food. On a crisp Saturday morning, they wandered through Chelsea Market, sampling artisanal cheeses and discussing the merits of various chocolate makers. Sebastian's hand found hers as they walked, his fingers intertwining with hers naturally. I want to show you something, he said, guiding her toward the exit, if you're up for a short trip. A sleek black car waited outside and Sebastian opened the door for her. Where are we going? Zoe asked, intrigued. Somewhere I think you'll appreciate. 40 minutes later, they pulled up to an unassuming warehouse in an industrial area of Queens. Zoe raised an eyebrow as Sebastian led her to a heavy metal door. If this is where you secretly hide the bodies of art forgers, I should warn you that my roommate knows where I am, she joked. Sebastian laughed. Nothing so dramatic. He punched a code into the keypad and swung the door open. Welcome to my private conservation lab. Zoe stepped inside and gasped. The warehouse had been converted into a state-of-the-art conservation facility. One section held a digital imaging area with equipment she'd only read about in journals. Another contained chemical analysis tools that her university labs would have envied. In the center, a large workspace was arranged with custom lighting and climate control. Sebastian, this is. Words failed her as she walked slowly through the space, taking in the technology. I've been building it for the past 3 years, he explained, watching her reaction with evident pleasure. My foundation funds public conservation efforts, but I wanted a space where we could develop and test new methodologies without institutional constraints. I have a small team of conservators who work here part-time on special projects. He hesitated. I was hoping you might want to consult on some of them. Your perspective would be invaluable. Zoey turned to him, overcome with emotion. You created all this because you care about preservation. Art tells our human story, Sebastian said quietly. Preserving it matters. In that moment, Zoey realized she was falling in love with him not because of his wealth or what he could offer her professionally, but because of who he was at his core. She stepped closer, placed her hands on his chest, and rose on her tiptoes to kiss him. Sebastian responded immediately, his arms encircling her waist, drawing her closer. The kiss deepened, filled with the connection they'd been building over weeks of conversations and shared passions. When they finally broke apart, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that since the gala, he admitted. Why didn't you? Zoey asked, slightly breathless. I wanted you to know me first, not the name or the reputation. His hands cradled her face gently. I wanted you to see me. I do see you, she whispered. And I like what I see very much. Their relationship blossomed over the following months, growing deeper as they shared more of themselves with each other. Zoey began consulting on projects at Sebastian's lab, her innovative approaches complementing his resources and connections. Not everything was smooth sailing. When Zoey's coworkers discovered she was dating Sebastian Xavier, the rumors spread quickly. Some suggested she was using him for career advancement, while others implied he was just amusing himself with a younger woman. Does it bother you? Sebastian asked one evening as they sat on his terrace overlooking Central Park. The talk, Zoey considered the question. Sometimes, she admitted, not because I believe it, but because it makes me question if I'm good enough on my own merits. Sebastian took her hand. You were changing the field before you ever met me. That's why I noticed you in the first place. I know, Zoey said, and honestly, I'm more concerned about how it affects you. A billionaire could date anyone, models, aristocrats, people from your world. Instead, you're with someone who gets excited about microscopic pigment analysis. Sebastian's laugh was gentle. That's precisely why I'm with you. My world, as you call it, is full of people who see art as an investment or a status symbol. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You see its soul. That's rare, Zoey. You're rare. 6 months after they met, Sebastian invited Zoey to accompany him to Italy for the unveiling of a recently restored fresco his foundation had funded. The small medieval church was nestled in the Tuscan hills, surrounded by cypress trees and vineyards. As they stood before the vibrant colors of the restored artwork, Zoey was struck by the expression on Sebastian's face, a mixture of awe and satisfaction that mirrored her own feelings. It's beautiful, she said softly. It is, Sebastian agreed, but he was looking at her, not the fresco. That evening, in a private villa overlooking the rolling countryside, Sebastian seemed unusually nervous as they finished dinner on the terrace. Is everything all right? Zoey asked. You've been distracted all evening. Sebastian set down his wine glass and took a deep breath. I've been thinking about how to do this. I considered elaborate gestures, private museums, rare art unveilings, all the things money can buy. He moved from his chair to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. But in the end, I wanted it to be just us, surrounded by beauty but focused on each other. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Zoey Abbott, you've changed how I see the world. Before you, I understood art intellectually. Now I feel it emotionally because I see it through your eyes. He opened the box, revealing a ring with a central diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires that caught the light of the setting sun. Will you marry me? Tears welled in Zoey's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, absolutely yes. Sebastian slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that spoke of their shared future. I love you, he said against her lips, not for what you do or what you know, but for who you are. And I love you, Zoey replied. The man who rescued me at a gala but gave me the space to rescue myself in all the ways that matter. A year after their first meeting, Zoey and Sebastian stood together in the grand ballroom of the same hotel where they'd met. But this time, the gala was for their newly established Abbott Xavier Institute for Art Conservation Education, a program designed to train the next generation of conservators, regardless of their financial means. Eleanor Hargrove approached them, champagne in hand. "When I suggested you network at last year's gala, this isn't exactly what I had in mind," she said to Zoey with a smile, "but I must say you've exceeded expectations." "She has a habit of doing that," Sebastian said proudly, his arm around his wife's waist. As Eleanor moved on to greet other guests, Zoey turned to Sebastian. "Do you ever regret it, stepping in that night?" "Never," he said without hesitation. "It was the best decision I've ever made. Even better than diversifying into renewable shipping technologies," she teased, referring to his company's recent innovation that had doubled their stock value. "Far better," Sebastian assured her. "That made me richer, you made me happier." He glanced around the room. "Speaking of which, shall we make our announcement?" Zoey nodded, a secret smile playing on her lips. Sebastian tapped his glass gently, calling for attention. The crowd quieted, faces turning toward them expectantly. "Thank you all for supporting the Institute tonight," Sebastian began. "Your generosity will ensure that art conservation remains a vibrant field for generations to come." His eyes found Zoey's. "Speaking of future generations, my wife and I are thrilled to announce that in about 7 months, we'll be welcoming our own next generation, a baby girl who will no doubt inherit her mother's brilliant mind and passion for preservation." The room erupted in applause and congratulations. As guests surged forward to offer their well wishes, Sebastian leaned close to whisper in Zoey's ear. "From being cornered at a gala to creating a family. Quite a journey, wouldn't you say?" Zoey smiled, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. "The best kind of journey, unexpected, challenging, and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined." As they accepted congratulations from the crowd, Zoey reflected on the night that had changed everything when a stranger had stepped in to rescue her, not knowing that they would ultimately rescue each other, creating a love as enduring as the art they both cherished. 3 years later, Zoey sat in the sunny nursery of their Brooklyn brownstone, watching Sebastian read an art history book to their daughter, Lily, and their 6-month-old son, James. Sebastian had insisted they keep their primary residence in Zoey's beloved Brooklyn, though they also maintained homes in Tuscany and near his company headquarters in Boston. "And this," Sebastian was saying, pointing to a Monet, "is called Impressionism. The artists tried to capture light and feeling instead of exact details. Like feelings are more important than facts," Lily said solemnly, her 3-year-old wisdom making both parents smile. "Exactly," Sebastian agreed. "Sometimes the impression something leaves on your heart matters more than the details on paper." He looked up and caught Zoey's eye, his expression full of the love that had only deepened with time and parenthood, like when Daddy saw Mommy at the party. Lily asked, having heard their meeting story many times. "Just like that," Sebastian confirmed. "I saw your Mommy, and the impression she left on my heart changed everything." Zoey joined them on the floor, wrapping her arms around her family. "We've created quite a masterpiece, haven't we?" She murmured. "The most valuable one in my collection," Sebastian replied, kissing her softly. "And unlike the others, this one keeps growing more beautiful every day." As James reached up to grab his father's finger and Lily snuggled closer to her mother, Zoey thought about how a single moment being cornered at a gala had led to this extraordinary life. Not because Sebastian was a billionaire, but because he was the person who saw her completely and loved her for exactly who she was. Their love story, like the art they both cherished, was about seeing beneath the surface to the truth that lay within a masterpiece created with passion, preserved with care, and growing more valuable with each passing day.